Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1067 for July 28th, 2024. Coming up in a few minutes.
What we do with the Heart Cut is we're creating a portfolio of whiskies from distilleries that we are excited by. And it just so happens that they are spread out across the world.
Georgie Bell is a longtime brand ambassador and former head of global whiskey advocacy for Bacardi. Last year, she and her husband Fabrizio Leoni launched the Heart Cut, an independent bottler devoted to finding unique whiskeys from all over the world, and she did it while being pregnant with twins. I'll talk with Georgie about the Heart Cut and work-life balance later on WhiskyCast In-Depth. We'll also have the What I'm Tasting This Week department, behind the label, and a whole lot more. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever wondered where Redbreast got its name? Well, let's go back to 1912 and be glad our bird-watching founder didn't spot the bar-tailed godwit that day.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
Gabriel Cardarella from Jewers here. The 2024 U.S. Open Championship may have ended, but you can still get your hands on the whiskey created to honor it. The new Jewers 19-Year-Old Champions Edition. Trust me, a whiskey you don't want to miss. More details coming up.
Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. The Irish Whiskey Association has released its latest report on distillery tourism, with more than 800,000 people visiting distilleries on the island through the year ending June 30th. That's up from the previous year, but still below the pre-pandemic record set back in 2019, when more than 1 million people visited distilleries in Ireland. Brown-Forman is doubling down on its investment in the Glendronach distillery. It has submitted a planning application to Aberdeenshire Council for a project that will see the historic Boynes Mill House restored and turned into a luxury guest experience, along with the conversion of an existing warehouse into a new visitors center. The project is scheduled to be completed in 2026 when the distillery celebrates its 200th anniversary. It'll be the third set of upgrades at the distillery since 2020. While France is celebrating the Olympics, two of the country's drinks giants are struggling with sales. Both LVMH and Rémy Cointreau reported lagging sales during the last quarter. LVMH's wines and spirits unit reported a 9% drop in revenues during the quarter, while Rémy reported a 15% drop in sales. Both companies have been hit hard by lagging cognac sales worldwide, and LVMH was hurt by a decline in champagne sales as well. While the strike by Liquor Control Board of Ontario workers is over, the LCBO still faces a major challenge from the drinks industry. Spirits Canada members are taking the provincial liquor agency to court over a retroactive tax bill totaling millions of dollars. The LCBO claims it's owed money by Diageo, Brown-Forman, and other producers over lower prices given to Quebec's SAQ Provincial Liquor Board. The LCBO claims that violates its sales agreements, requiring that it receive the same or lower wholesale pricing as other Canadian liquor boards, and calls the bill a pricing chargeback instead of a tax. Tales of the Cocktail handed out its annual Spirited Awards this week in New Orleans. Alquimico in Cartagena, Colombia, was named the world's best cocktail bar, while the Yacht Club in Denver was named the best U.S. cocktail bar. Our friend Dave Mitten of J.P. Weiser's was named Best International Brand Ambassador, while Monkey Shoulder's Anna Maines was named Best U.S. Brand Ambassador. We have a link to the complete list of winners in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. In addition, the New Orleans Spirits Competition announced its winners this week as well. Widow Jane Lucky 13 Bourbon was named the American Whiskey of the Year, while Le Chig 10-Year-Old won World Whiskey of the Year honors. Japan's Kanosuke Distillery was named Distillery of the Year. Once again, we have a link to the complete list of category winners in the show notes for this episode. You'll find it at whiskycast.com. A couple of weeks ago, we reported on a court decision overturning federal restrictions on home distilling in the U.S. Now, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice has signed a bill into law that would allow limited home distilling for West Virginians. Under the bill, an individual can distill up to 5 gallons of alcohol each year for personal use only, while families can distill up to 10 gallons. It's still illegal to sell homemade liquor without a license, though. New whiskeys of note this week. Murray McDavid has released a new collection of vintage single malts. The Ultra collection includes a 1972 Caperdonic 50-year-old whiskey, along with a 1991 Glen Scotia and 1993 Macallan single malts. There's no word on pricing. Tomatin has released a new collection of Highland single malts, highlighting sherry cask maturation. The sherry collection includes 3 whiskeys matured in Manzanilla, Palo Cortado, and PX sherry casks. The Manzanilla edition was distilled in 2014 and finished in Manzanilla sherry butts for 2 years. It's priced at £65 a bottle. The Palo Cortado edition was distilled in 2008 and finished in Palo Cortado butts for 3 years. It's priced at £95 a bottle. Finally, the Pedro Jimenez edition is 17 years old and finished in PX casks for 8 years. It's priced at £150 a bottle. Glencadam has launched a limited edition 27-year-old single malt. Glencadam Reserva de Jerez is finished in Oloroso sherry butts. Only 1,691 bottles will be available, with a recommended retail price of £725 each. In the U.S., 15 Stars has unveiled a new limited edition release as well. Three Kings Fine-Aged Whiskey blends wheat, rye, and bourbons aged 11 and 15 years old. It's available while supplies last for a suggested retail price of $179 a bottle. There's also a new 15 Stars 13-year-old Timeless Reserve Series bourbon that's a blend of 13 and 15-year-old whiskeys. It's bottled at 51.5% ABV and carries a recommended retail price of $279 a bottle. The World Whisky Society has launched 2 new American single malts bearing the name of the legendary Wyatt Earp. There's a barrel-proof edition as well as a small batch whiskey that's bottled at 48% ABV. The Wyatt Earp Barrel Proof carries a recommended retail price of $95.50 a bottle, while the Wyatt Earp Small Batch is priced at $59.99 a bottle. Finally, Johnny Walker has teamed up with artist Scott Naismith on a unique project at the Johnny Walker Experience in Edinburgh, Scotland. Visitors will have the chance to use AI to design their own bespoke bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label. The project will have visitors answer a series of questions that will influence the AI system's design choices, and the bottle will be printed in minutes on site. It'll be available starting this Thursday and running through the end of August, with every purchase of a bottle of Blue Label at the Johnny Walker Experience. You can keep up with the latest whiskey news all week long at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. You know, whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
Let's open up the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Kensington Wine Market in Calgary, Alberta has a Torraveg and More virtual tasting this Tuesday night. The whiskey sponge himself, Angus MacRailed, will lead a tasting at the Whiskey Exchange's Great Portland Street shop in London coming up on Thursday night. Whiskey Fringe gets underway in Edinburgh, Scotland on August 9th and runs through the 11th. Sagamore Spirit Distillery in Baltimore, Maryland has its monthly Whiskey on the Waterfront party coming up on the 17th. The Chicago and Denver Summer Whiskey Festivals are both on August 24th, along with the American Whiskey Show in Sydney, Australia. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
Every year, Dewar's, the official Scotch whiskey of the U.S. Open Championship, rolls out a special limited edition whiskey to celebrate that year's tournament. The 2024 championship wrapped up in June, but the 2024 Dewar's 19-year Pinehurst edition is available now, and you don't want to miss it. This year's 19-year whiskey is double-aged, then extra matured in rye casks. offering a rich profile with notes of pear and heather honey. There's a hint of spice in there too, along with a dusting of cinnamon and cocoa powder. It's a sensory delight for any true whiskey or golf fan. So trust me, my fellow aficionados, grab a bottle and enjoy a whiskey crafted with the same skill and precision that makes the U.S. Open legendary. Please drink responsibly. Copyright 2024. Dewar's Blended Scotch Whiskey, 46% alcohol by volume. Imported by John Dewar & Sons, Coral Gables, Florida.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Oban and the Classic Malts lineup. Launching a new business is never easy, but doing it while you're pregnant with twins, well, that's a real challenge. Georgie Bell and her husband Fabrizio Leoni launched the Heart Cut Independent Bottler last September. They've released 7 single cask bottlings so far, and have been so well received that the Heart Cut was named Independent Bottler of the Year in this year's Icons of Whiskey Awards. The Heart Cut takes a different approach to independent bottling, as Georgie Bell told me the other day on a Zoom call. What prompted you and Fabrizio to essentially leave your jobs and start an independent bottler?
At the same time as having twins.
Yeah.
Mark, as you know, I've always been into independent bottlings. I started my career at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and I'm still very much an advocate for them. And I've always had an affinity to the independent bottling landscape. And I wanted to create an independent bottler for 2024 of today and for today's whiskey drinker. An independent bottling which is accessible, an independent bottler that collaborates with its distilleries, that doesn't buy from cask brokers, and an independent bottler that was focused on education, welcoming people into the whiskey category, and also helping them explore and discover new distilleries. Because, as you know very well, the whiskey landscape in the last 15 years since I've been working in whiskey has changed significantly. And there are distilleries across all 4 corners of the globe. Yet it can still be quite an intimidating space, because where do you go to next? What do you look for? There's a lot of brands out there. And so Fabrizio and I wanted to create a way to guide people through that landscape, through hand-picked bottlings, by saying, through the Heart Cut, we love these distilleries. We think you'll like them too. We've hand-picked bottlings alongside these distilleries. And once you've enjoyed our bottlings, please go and discover the rest of their brand's portfolio. Add that new distillery to your repertoire.
And you've added a very eclectic range of distilleries, from Stauning and Cointreau to M&H in Israel, and Few Spirits in the U.S., and Westward in the U.S. as well. How did you pick these distilleries to start out with?
Honestly, they're distilleries that I love drinking whiskey from. They're distilleries that I admire their founders. I like their whiskey first and foremost. And they're distilleries that have really interesting stories to tell. So that's kind of how I went through it. Like you too, I've also picked up, I've been traveling around for a lot of my career. So I've been to a few of these distilleries in the past, and I've just been really excited by them. So what we do with the Heart Cut is we're curating a portfolio of whiskies from distilleries that we are excited by. And it just so happens that they are spread out across the world. So, we have 7 single casks out to date. And for our future casks, we've got conversations with some distilleries in Australia, in India, over in Ireland, a few more in America, a couple in Scotland. So a very wide breadth, showcasing what whiskey is, if that makes sense, not what people think it might be.
What excites you about the whiskey industry these days?
I am excited about, and I mentioned this briefly before, but I'm excited about how the whiskey industry is so worldly from a geographic perspective. And for all of these new distilleries that are coming up in sort of new world whiskey countries, they're zigging where others zag, and they're creating their own traditions. I'm really excited by that. They're pushing flavor boundaries because they're really trying to showcase their provenance. That really excites me. And the other piece that excites me is, I suppose, the democratization of whiskey and how it's grown sort of demographically in the last 15 years that I've been in the industry. So the whiskey bars that we see today, some of them never existed 15 years ago, and the concept probably wouldn't have existed 15 years ago. The amount of whiskey cocktails on menus, that ratio definitely wasn't as high 15 years ago. So I'm really enjoying seeing sort of the versatility, the flexibility, and the how the industry is making whiskey a really approachable and accessible area.
And on the flip side, what's frustrating you about the industry?
What is frustrating me? Not a lot. I'm trying to remain positive in this as a new brand owner. I would say that what frustrates me is still I'm seeing time after time after time again, super old age statement whiskies with a price tag attached to them that is akin to a deposit that you'd lay on an apartment, that will probably never be drunk. And the frequent use of the words first, best, most, time after time again. I have a Google alert for whiskey. Every day there's a first, there's a best, there's a most. And it seems like a competition consistently between some. So those, I would say, are my bugbears. But apart from that, as I said before, I'm really excited for the industry and what we're seeing come out of it at the moment.
What was the biggest struggle so far in setting up the hard cut?
Time, having children at the same time.
How do you balance that?
That's a very good question. When I know the answer, I'll let you know. The kids are in bed right now. It's 7 p.m. at night, and so I get a little bit of work done now. And we have some childcare, so very much friends and family have helped us along the way. We took a while setting up the heart cut. When you're setting up a company, especially over here in the UK, you've got all sorts of hoops to jump through and HMRC bits and bobs. So, you know, it's been a long-term project in the background, not something on a whim, let's say. It's very, very thought about.
Explain that, because a lot of folks don't understand the intricacies of setting up an independent bottler in the UK.
So I think most people would assume that you just create a brand and click your fingers and then you've got a brand good to go. I think first and foremost, what you need to do when starting a brand, and we especially did this with the heart cut, is figuring out where was our space, what was the opportunity, and also why should people care about us? Why should people care about the heart cut? You know, we're an independent bottler. We don't want to be just another independent bottler, because especially over here, there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are bottling very delicious whiskey. A lot of them are focusing on Scotch whiskey within that. So we realized that for Fab and I, that our love of wild whiskey, and as I said before, these distilleries popping up around the world, that's where we wanted to focus. We wanted to make that side accessible. We buy our casks directly from our partner distilleries. We don't buy through cask brokers. So because of that, as you said before, we've bottled incredible single casks from distilleries in Tel Aviv, like M&H, from Fuse Spirits in Chicago, from Westwood in Portland in Oregon. Now you can imagine that the journey of that cask from there to our bottling hall in Scotland is quite some way. So I'd say definitely logistics are an area that people probably don't think about when picking up a bottle of whiskey. And then on top of that, as I said, making yourself a legitimate company. So HMRC looks after all of the alcohol and licensing here in the UK, and there's all sorts of very unsexy but very important pieces that you have to tick off and hoops to go through to be able to set up a brand. So, the Heart Cup was about 2 years in the making before we launched in September of last year.
And before you even launched, you had already started winning awards.
Yeah, we launched in September of last year, very softly. And then in March of this year, we won Independent Bottler of the Year at the Global Icons of Whisky's final through the Whisky magazine. So we were totally shocked, I'll be honest with you, Mark. We were sat at the back of the hall on the table closest to the exit doors. And Fab and I both thought, oh gosh, got a babysitter for the first time. What are we doing here? We've definitely not won this. And then they called our name, which was wonderful. And I think that really goes to show that now there is a thirst for this, the thirst for this accessibility piece, a thirst for, seeing whiskey as not just a bottle, but a storytelling mechanic and a place to be able to really, truly collaborate with brands. Mark, at the end of the day, we're not making this whiskey. The distilleries are. So we want to ensure that the story that we're telling about the whiskey will do the distillery justice. And that's really important to us. So yeah, it was wonderful that we won that.
Where do you go from here?
We bottle more and more, and we partner with lots of exciting distilleries across the globe. As I said, we've got some really exciting conversations right now. I've got some samples just behind me. I've got a call first thing tomorrow morning with a distillery to go through them. And we keep showcasing to people the world of whiskey. We keep collaborating, and we keep finding really exciting people to partner with. So, and exciting casks along the way. Every single cask that we've bottled so far is totally different from the next. And that for me is really exciting as well. It's not just a curated selection of different distilleries. It's also different guises of what whiskey can be. And that's what I want to continue doing.
What's the best thing about working with your husband?
We have very complementary skills. Fab was a project manager in the past with an agency. He loves a spreadsheet. He is incredible at spreadsheets and logistics and organization and finance and data and that side of things. Whereas for myself, I'm very much, my strong suit is marketing and advocacy and distillery liaisons and sales. So definitely finding out that it took a while for us to figure out how to work together, because I think a lot of couples probably listening to this would be like, gosh, I don't think I could do that. It definitely took a while to figure it out and to figure out how our strengths play together. And now it's an absolute joy, and it's a total divide and conquer piece. It's actually really exciting. And what's really nice, Mark, is I'm working with someone that I can 100% trust as well. And because it's just the two of us on this brand, plus some incredibly supportive agency partners who are helping us out here and there, it very much is not just a labor of love and passion, but something that we're all working towards for the greater good. And for the first time in my life, we're working for ourselves, and it definitely feels different. Feels totally different from working from bigger organizations that I worked with in the past.
And representing other people's whiskeys.
Yeah, but representing other people's brilliant whiskeys as well. So, I'm still a huge advocate for every whiskey that I've worked with in the past, and brands and companies as well. As we are with the Heart Cut, as I said before, when we're talking about our Westwood whiskey bottling, this incredible American single malt, we're not just talking about the hard cut, we're talking about Westwood too. So it's almost like a friends for all piece that we've been able to move ourselves into.
I think that does it. Anything else you can add I didn't ask about?
I think that's all. I'm just really excited for people to try our whiskies, to learn more about these distilleries around the world, and really explore and discover something new through the hard cut bottlings. So yeah, all 7 releases to date, I'm incredibly proud of. And this has been my career working up to creating this. So I couldn't be prouder of it. And a huge thanks to everyone who's supported us to date.
Thanks to Georgie Bell of the Heart Cut for joining us on this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Oban, a deliciously smooth single malt known for its coastal charm and Highland heritage, loved by whiskey lovers worldwide. Discover Oban's full lineup at malts.com. Let's kick off the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the new 18-year-old single malt from the Glenrothes. It's bottled at 43% ABV. The nose has touches of ginger snap cookies, pear candies, vanilla, a hint of dates, and honey. The taste is sweet with a subtle burst of spices. There's ginger, vanilla, and a hint of white pepper on top of pears, dates, and honey. The finish is long and mouth-coating with lingering ginger, spice, and vanilla. I'm scoring the Glenrothes 18-year-old a 94. Now, Gordon Motion is the master whiskey maker behind the Glenrothes 18. He's also the master whiskey maker for Highland Park and just released batch number 5 of Highland Park cask strength. It's bottled at a whopping 64.7% ABV. The nose has touches of dried fruits, subtle spices, dark chocolate, and hints of peat smoke and hazelnut. The taste is peppery and pungent with black pepper and peat smoke, balanced by dried fruits, a hint of cinnamon, dark chocolate, and honey, while the finish is long, thick, and spicy. I'm scoring the Highland Park cask strength batch number 5 a 92. Finally, let's look at the Torreveg Knock na Moine single malt from the Isle of Skye. It's the 3rd release in Torreveg's Legacy series and is aged in a mix of American Oak Oloroso, PX, and X bourbon casks. It's bottled at 46% ABV. The nose is aromatic with touches of salted caramel, a kiss of smoke, figs, honey, and a slight nuttiness. The taste starts off light and fruity at first, then the peat smoke and touches of spice take over. It's delightfully complex with figs, honey, and roasted almonds in the background, and the finish is long with lingering spices. I'm scoring the Torreveg Knock na Moine a 93. I'll be adding these tasting notes to our searchable list of more than 3,700 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
So, in Spain, they call Redbreast Petit Roco. It's me, but a touch more exotic. Kind of like a Redbreast PX edition. Finished in Pedro Jimenez casks, adding a velvety and decadent dimension. You know, I won't lie. A climate like this makes me wish I was a migratory bird.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
Let's open up the inbox and see what people are talking about this week. Our community segment is presented by Waterford Whiskey. With all of the new reports out there claiming that even a small amount of alcohol consumption is hazardous to our health, I asked in the WhiskyCast community app this week whether community members are worried that their daily dram may come back to haunt them one day. Pete at Whiskey Ranked included a link to one of those articles. A New York Times piece headlined, "Is that drink worth it to you?" He added this, "Risk statistics are often presented in the relative sense and forget the absolute. Both are important for a full understanding and assessment. This New York Times article briefly presents current understanding of the risks of drinking, both the relative and the absolute. For example, those who drink 6 drinks a week are 10 times more likely to die of an alcohol-related cause compared to those drinking 2 drinks a week. In an absolute sense, drinking 6 a week decreases the average lifespan by 2.5 months. Personally, drinking a dram a day and living to 75.9 years versus 76.1 years on a dram a week is worth it to me. Whatever your views, please drink responsibly and don't put others in harm's way when you do. Juan Cruz replied with this: "Not worried. There are really serious conditions out there that can kill me suddenly or very slowly and painfully. Better have fun before then." I agree with how Whiskey Ranked put it. Ian Bruce added this comment: "Not worried. Being exposed through more processed foods nowadays, as well as microplastics and sugars, I think is more worrying. Plus, and I believe so will others, we'll know of people who have rarely drank alcohol or smoked, but ended up with serious health issues." And Dan chimed in with this: "Just wait a while. There'll be more reports soon saying how beneficial a few drinks a week are." If you have something you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, including your opinion on this, download the free WhiskyCast community app and join the conversation. You'll find it in your app store. You can also find us on X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast, and the email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Our community segment is presented by Waterford Whiskey on the web at waterfordwhiskey.com.
100 individual farms of Irish barley, separately harvested, malted, fermented, distilled and matured. Is that too much effort? Perhaps. Unless you're interested in flavour above all else. Waterford Whiskey, the most naturally flavoursome single malt.
Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. What's the oldest known written reference to whiskey? Well, if you answered Friar John Corr's reference to 7 bowls of malt for distilling whiskey for the king in the Exchequer Rolls of 1495, well, that's the earliest reference to whiskey production in Scotland. Look instead to Ireland, where the Irish whiskey industry is celebrating the 700th anniversary this year of the Red Book of Ossory. It was written in 1324 and contains the first written reference to aqua vitae or Uisce Batha. The book will go on display soon at Kilkenny's St. Canice's Cathedral, and it's part of a year-long celebration of 700 years of Irish whiskey tradition. If there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us on X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast, or you can use the WhiskyCast community app. Download it today from the Apple and Google App Stores. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
The 2024 release of Dewar's 19-Year-Old Champions Edition is out now, available at Dewars.com. Get it while you can and appreciate every double-aged rye cask finished dram. Please drink responsibly.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever go out drinking with a peacock? Always the same. Few too many, tail feathers come out, drinks get knocked over, bartender's not happy, night's over before it started. All I'm saying is, don't be the peacock in your group.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2024, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.